Chapter 1, Section 8, Solving Equations. This will be done through either multiplication or division. Let's just go over some quick vocabulary really quick. This is more review than anything because you've already had it in class, that is. The first word would be coefficient. And in class we decided to basically call it, or define it, as a number times a variable. If you need any more on that, if you go to the glossary of your book, it's going to be on page G5. An example, 5x, 5 is the coefficient, negative 3a, negative 3 is the coefficient, and then y. Y is actually 1y, and that's the coefficient. And then finally, an example of a fraction, let's just say it's m over 6, and that'll be 1 over 6 m, the fraction, 1 over 6 being the coefficient. The other word would be reciprocal. And again, in short, what we thought in class was flip the fraction. Is there more to it than that? Absolutely. It's a multiplicative inverse, which means you're multiplying the inversion of the given fraction. And remember, whole numbers are fractions as well. If you need anything else on that, I would go to page G27. A couple of examples. If I give you 4 over 5, well then the reciprocal of that would be 5 over 4. Another one, 7 over 9, the reciprocal would be 9 over 7. Negative 6 would be negative 1 over 6. Now let's do some actual math. Some of these might be the same as what we had in class. So here we're going to use multiplication. To solve this, okay? So I'm going to give you a division example. X divided by 2 is equal to 12. So the first thing you need to do is identify that the coefficient is 1 over 2. Now that you know the fraction is 1 over 2, our reciprocal of 1 over 2 will be 2 over 1. So we're going to multiply those. And remember, whatever you do to one side, you do to the other. Now 2 over 1 is just 2. This is 2 over 2, that equals 1, leaving you with x. And 2 times 12 is 24. And you're done. Let's try another one. Negative 2 is equal to w over 7. So again, the question you have to ask yourself when you're doing your homework is, what is the reciprocal of w? Well, w is, or has, a reciprocal of a coefficient of 1 over 7. Now you're asking yourself what the reciprocal is for 1 over 7. I'm going to focus on that left side first. So it's 1 over 7 times the reciprocal. Don't forget your W. And then over here it's going to be negative 2 times 7. The product of these two factors is negative 14. And then the product of these two factors, if you simplify it first, is just W. Remember, the whole idea of the inverse operation is, 1, obviously you think it's to get the answer, but 2 is also to show how you isolate this variable in order to get to the answer. Do one more of these. Sometimes they'll give you a coefficient where the numerator is going to be greater than 1. Something like 5u over 9 is equal to 35. This I think is easier than the first two examples, because in the first two examples our numerators are 1 and they don't stand out to you as much as a 5 does. Now that we know that 5 is the numerator and 9 is the denominator, our fraction is 5/9. That's your coefficient. So we're going to multiply by the reciprocal of that coefficient. Now it gets really interesting on the left side. The right side's pretty easy. I'm sorry, the left side's pretty easy. 9 over 9 is 1. 5 over 5 is 1, leaving you with u. Now, I'm a fan of the factoring method. So 35 is 7 times 5. I already know my denominator is only a 5. So normally I would factor this 9, but I'm not going to today because I know what's in my denominator. 5 over 5 is 1. That leaves me 7 times 9. So u is 63. So that's how you use multiplication to solve an equation. It's all about multiplying by the reciprocal, which we're going to add right here. Multiply by the reciprocal. That's really important. All three examples show that. Alright, now let's use some division. So we've got 5x is equal to 35. You should also be accustomed to saying that as 5 times x is 35. That might actually help you with this next part, because we know that this is 5, as I just said, times x. And that might just help you realize that we need to do the opposite of this. So we're going to divide both sides by 5. 5 over 5 is 1, leaving us with x. And then 35 over 5 is 7. And there you go. We'll talk about checking your work later. I know that some of you might have people asking you, do you have to check your work? Normally we do, but we're going to be focusing on just solving them first. And we'll talk about checking them later, which is actually a lesson in itself sometimes. Negative 9m is equal to negative 45. So my coefficient is negative 9. I'm multiplying by a negative 9. So I'm going to divide by a negative 9. and I'm going to divide both sides by a negative 9. Negative 9 over negative 9 is 1. And on these examples, I've kept the numbers a little bit less in value, so I'm not going to get into the factoring method right now, but normally I would. So negative 45 over negative 9. First of all, negative over negative is positive, so I'm going to emphasize that right there. And then 45 divided by 9 is 5. Alright, and there's one more to go. This time I'm going to put the variable on the right side. So we have 11 is equal to negative 2z. Again, identify your coefficient, negative 2. We're multiplying by a negative 2. So that means we're going to divide both sides by a negative 2. Let's start on this side. Negative 2 over negative 2 is positive 1. So the right side is just z at this point. Now, 11 over negative 2 is, well, an improper fraction. It's 11, negative 11 halves. Now that's an acceptable answer. Okay. Now when it comes to checking, this will be an easier number to use than changing it to mixed. But for all intents and purposes, you need to also be accustomed to giving mixed answers to people. So for my class, this is very acceptable. And in the future, you might have to tell the teacher that it's negative 5.5 is z. Okay, I'm going to be very cool with that. As far as the negative 5.5 answer, well, just reminding you, numerator divided by a denominator. 2 goes in 11 5 times. Two goes into 10 5 times. So there it is, negative 5.5. Yeah, I could have expressed it as a decimal or as a fraction. I just chose to do the first one, the fraction. So your homework is going to be page 39. And it is 10 through 25. All right, good luck with that.